Speaksies.
This is Steve with Origin of Speaksies. In Richmond, Virginia, we have so many great craft beers that, just like your children, it's tough to choose the one you love best. But let's be honest, just like your kids, you know that you have a favorite. And my favorite Richmond craft beer is Hardywood. My favorite Hardywood craft beer is the Great Return, an American IPA with 7.5% ABV, and whose proceeds also benefit our environment through the James River Association, which you know means a lot to me, #green. To order Great Return or another great beer from Hardywood Brewery, go to hardywood.com. That's hardywood.com. Hardywood, Richmond's best craft beer. Just like your favorite kid.
So 2020's been a rough year. As we all know, Kobe died. There was a pandemic. But sometimes all it takes is one thing to cheer you up, Steve, and I have my one thing.
Very good. I'm glad you found something in 2020
Yes.
to cheer you up. What is it?
I did. So earlier today, I just happened to stumble across a teaser trailer of Ina Garten, a.k.a. the Barefoot Contessa, announcing that she is back.
Oh, she's back.
So I let's play this clip because I think if you like Ina Garten at all, or even if you don't, you're gonna enjoy this.
Now comes the fun part. Cocktails. I love making cocktails. They're just fun to make and they're fun to drink. Everything tastes better in a martini glass. I love having a job where you have to drink on the job. And what am I missing? Oh, vodka. I'm going to add some bourbon to that. A good excuse to drink at 10 o'clock in the morning. I love making drinks ahead. The only thing I have to do is stop myself from drinking them. I learned this actually from a cocktail. I actually learned this from I don't know. God. And then Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. Say that fast. Let me do that one more time. Ooh, is that good? Ooh, I'm going to be asleep by 11. Cheers. Cheers. Boy, that hits all the right notes. Okay, I'll do another cheers. 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 Just another sip. Cheers. Cheers. I'm not going to get much done today.
So hopefully that brought a smile on your face.
It did, and it sounds like that she's been prepared for 2020.
Exactly.
Like she's got it down now. That sounds like every homeschool mother here.
I know.
About 2 o'clock in the afternoon every day.
I know, and that's the. So I saw this teaser trailer and it said Ina Garten's back, and I Googled and actually saw something that said like Barefoot Contessa is a mood for 2020, which is basically what you were just saying, a #mood.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and what's great is she dropped a little video in April of this year doing a cocktail and then kind of disappeared. I mean, her show went on for a little bit, but then it's been on break and nobody's heard from her. And then she dropped this teaser trailer like out of nowhere, boom, show's back.
Right.
And it makes me very happy. And like you said, it does seem like she's been, like a lot of us, maybe dipping into the cocktails a little more than normal. But who can blame her?
Yeah. No one's judging you this year for that. This is the year to get away with it, that you could, pretend it's Sunday fun day every day.
Right.
Especially after you've had to manage your children on computers attempting to do school.
Right. So I am thrilled for this new season. And what's fun and what also makes this 2020 is that she's doing the whole thing by herself with an iPhone.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's like she doesn't want to go get COVID. She's like, some people are doing productions and some aren't.
Yeah.
She's not. She's doing it all on her iPhone. So in case you're wondering, Jeffrey is still around. I was worried because he wasn't in the teaser trailer at all. And then you start to worry. Like,
right.
Part of the fun of the show is just her waiting for Jeffrey to get home. But he is there. So I did a quick Google search and thankfully just this last, I think June or something, there was an episode of just Jeffrey's favorites and her. I don't know. I love Jeffrey probably just about as much as I love. Yeah. Actually, I don't even love Jeffrey. I love how much she enjoys Jeffrey.
That's a really good way to put it. Without that, even if you don't see him, the fact that she's waiting for Jeffrey, and unfortunately, we don't know what shape she's in by the time Jeffrey gets home.
Right.
But who knows? Hey, it's 2020.
That's right, and Jeffrey doesn't care. So, on that note, thank you, Ina Garten, for saving 2020. Now, again, the year's not over yet.
Oh yeah.
But I'll take what I can get.
Yeah. Hopefully she'll team up with President Kanye West and stop the Martians.
That's right.
That's my hope, is maybe she could be his Veep. I know this episode's going to air after the election, but frankly, everything I just said is definitely on the table. It's a possibility.
It's a possibility. So, Steve, tell us about what we're going to be talking about.
So I found a way to talk about one of my favorite things, sports rivalries, particularly college sports rivalries. And so we're going to look at the origin of some terms for what is the biggest college rivalry, University of Alabama versus Auburn University. So Iron Bowl themed show, and joining us tonight with a very unique perspective, we'll have a special guest, comedian Dusty Slay.
Yeah.
Dusty is an Alabama native and has a very unique insight into this rivalry that he can share with us tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. And you know, Steve, I don't know a ton about college football, and partially maybe because you kind of notice that sometimes it depends on where you went to college to how much you actually care about your
I think it
college
does.
football. My team, we're not that good, but your alma mater's been pretty good.
We've been decent. So before I get into where I went to school, just to talk a little bit more about rivalry games. And this can seem a little counterintuitive. One of the themes that we've discussed this year on our show is that politically we're not that far apart. Socially we're not that far apart as I think social media and the media in general makes us. But at the same time, I love rivalry games because I love it when people really hate each other.
Yeah.
I love it. There's just something about it. But it's done in a way that I think even though we're divided by other things, this hatred of other people can somehow unite us together.
Weirdly.
So to give a little perspective, I am an alumni of Virginia Tech. Our rival is the University of Virginia. We have a big football game every year called the Commonwealth Cup. For a decade plus, Virginia Tech held the Commonwealth Cup. That streak ended last fall, very bitterly for me. University of Virginia got it back, but we'll play each other again around Thanksgiving, which is another great time to see people divided by things. But so, as I mentioned, rivalries unite people, but they also bring together groups that might be kind of cut off otherwise. For instance, you could be a man or a woman and like Virginia Tech.
Right.
You can be white or black and like Michigan. You can be a Democrat or Republican and like Ohio State. You could be gay or bisexual and like UVA. So that's one of the things I like about.
That's very true.
I like about these rivalries. So one of the rivalries that I think is almost, to me, for the level of hatred that's there, is Alabama versus Auburn. So one story I heard years ago that I thought was fascinating was a pastor in my denomination was, I think, in residency at a church in Alabama. This was when he was finishing up seminary and getting ready to go to another church. At the church he was at in Alabama, he noted in the bylaws that there had to be equal number of elders from Alabama and Auburn. And that
awesome.
To me was so petty, but awesome at the same time.
It is kind of awesome.
Fascinated me.
I think it's awesome. It's awesome because it's like, look, you can really hate another school, but at the end of the day, there's a kind of respect there, right? It's like, you don't call someone a rival unless you respect them a little bit. Because there's times where you're like, they're not my rival. I was going to ask you about Tech and UVA. I mean, frankly, and I'll say it because I don't have a dog in the fight, but is it even a rivalry at the point where you win 20 in a row?
Right.
And
we got close to finding out. So, but that's what's great about it is the feelings it engenders. And again, in all seriousness, you can have people that might be divided by other things. And things like this, I think, pull people together. Because like you said, there is a certain amount of respect. You're not going to see people not work at a job because the guy next to them went to Michigan or Ohio State. They might not like that person, but at the same time, it's not going to break things up. So again, rivalry games are good. I think there's some sincere anger and hate that's there, but in a weird way, it's very constructive, I think.
It's good-natured. Might be a way
sometimes.
To put it. It should be good-natured.
It should be good-natured. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, a little bit as we talk to our guest later today, Dusty Slay. So before we get into this, Scott, what is a rivalry? I've shared my rivalry.
Yeah.
What's one that you really get into?
Well, you said Auburn, Alabama is the biggest college rivalry.
In my opinion.
I assume that's college football.
Right.
College basketball, I think you'd come down to either UNC Duke or what I would say is the number one is Louisville, Kentucky. And I grew up, well, I didn't grow up in Kentucky, but my family is all in Kentucky. Matter of fact, I'll be going there shortly to visit my grandmother. And I grew up as a huge University of Kentucky fan. So that one is one, and if you've ever been to Kentucky, I mean, you're red or blue, you know, and you go into a Walmart in Kentucky and there's a row of, you know, Louisville jackets and then 6 rows of UK jackets that you can pick from. So, and again, it's like with kind of like with Tech UVA, where in football, Kentucky Kentucky leads the all-time rivalry, something like 37-16. So it's pretty lopsided, but I'd say that's a pretty big one. And I do like the smack talk that happens between the two schools, or how someone will see the color and you know, give you a dirty look.
It provokes a reaction.
Yeah. But as far as the Auburn, Alabama thing, I got to tell you, I've been looking forward to this episode because I don't know that much about the rivalry. And I can illustrate that by the fact that my dad went to do work a contract job in Huntsville, Alabama when I was in high school. And he came back and gave me a bright orange Auburn shirt. Okay. I can still, you know, the color.
Right.
And had their logo on the front. Well, later my dad and I were driving. Actually, we were driving to Kentucky, I believe. We're on a road trip. We get out I'm pumping some gas, and some guy starts yelling "Roll Tide" at me. I have no idea what that means.
Right.
I have no, I don't, I'm like, are you talking to me? I kind of turn around and he just keeps yelling "Roll Tide." And I'm looking at him like, you know, giving him like a thumbs up, like, all right, man, whatever. And I explained to my dad when I got in the car, I said, this guy is screaming "Roll Tide" at me. I have no idea what he means. And he starts laughing because obviously he knows I'm wearing an Auburn shirt, and I should have said War Eagle back. Right. But I don't know. I don't care. I'm wearing this shirt because I think it looks cool. So I guess we'll find out a little bit about more.
We will find out. So the first set of terms we're going to look at pertain to the University of Alabama. We're going to look at the nickname of Crimson Tide and also the associated battle cry perhaps, of Roll Tide.
Nice.
So first, some facts about the University of Alabama. And this is pretty general from Wikipedia. So you know it's definitely maybe good. University of Alabama is a public research university in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, established in 1820. University of Alabama is the oldest and largest of the public universities in Alabama, as well as the flagship of the University of Alabama system. So some stats on them, 38,000 students, 33,000 of which are undergraduates. Their newspaper, the Crimson White, the colors are crimson, cool gray, and white. And their mascot is Big Al, an elephant. So we will also discuss what that means also. You get the origin of Big Al, which will be very brief. But first we're going to talk about the nickname of the University of Alabama, the Crimson Tide.
So real quick, Big Al.
Big Al.
Like AL for Alabama? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It took me a second. I'm thinking, is it like an owl, like Hoot? But no, it's Big Al, like our local Richmond celebrity Big Al.
Yeah, who had a sports bar that somehow stayed in business for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that's maybe for the subject of a mystery podcast that we'll do one day. So I did give some stats on the University of Alabama, but let's get down to what we're really here to talk about, football. So since beginning play in 1892, the Alabama Crimson Tide claimed 17 national championships. 5 of those titles before the poll era. You've heard the AP and the coaches poll.
Right.
12 in the era after that.
Okay.
From 1958 to 1982, they were led by Hall of Fame coach Paul Bear Bryant, who won 6 national championships with the program. Their current coach is Nick Saban, who has 5 national championships with the program.
Boo.
And I made a quick mention of an elephant, Big Al. One more elephant in the room that I did want to get out. Longtime Speaksies fans might be aware of someone that works with us by the name of Mr. Robert Banquette, who is a huge fan, a fanatic. He puts the fanatic in fan of the Alabama Crimson Tide. We discussed having him on this show, and frankly, there was no way to do this without it being banned for hate speech or just other things.
Come to fisticuffs or
the
something.
initial discussions with us indicated that his passion was not going to translate well. So we might hear from him around this time.
Well, and I wouldn't feel comfortable even sharing any thoughts about anything, because if I say something bad about Alabama, like you heard me boo Nick Saban earlier because I personally don't like Nick Saban.
Yeah.
Personally, I have a problem with Nick Saban. That we can save that. But if Robert Bankett was here, he'd take me down like one of his animal friends that he knows all the techniques to take down.
So first, let's talk about the origin of the term Crimson Tide, and then subsequently we'll talk about the battle cry of Roll Tide. Mm-hmm. So first article we're going to look at is from the Crimson White, aka the CW, the official student-run publication of the University of Alabama. From 2016, an article by Laura Testino, Can I Get a Roll Tide? The History of the Popular Phrase. From her article, quoting, Alabama tied Auburn 6-6 in 1907 after playing a tough game in red clay mud, and Crimson Tide was born. The Why Crimson Tide section of the Bryant Museum, as in Paul Bear Bryant, website states that Hugh Roberts, the former sports editor at the Birmingham Age Herald, coined the term. Okay. So, sounds pretty succinct.
So is it, I don't get it. So it was a 6-6 tie. Mm-hmm. Why would you name something after that? Because of the red clay is that what it was?
Well, we're not sure. So if you look up the origin of the term Crimson Tide, in most places you will hear the same definition or the same origin, that after this game that the term Crimson Tide was born.
The guy basically just said it.
Supposedly,
right? I get it. Supposedly, but the story is the guy just happened to say Crimson Tide, but there's no story about like something happened to cause a tide. It was just okay.
Correct.
All right.
But I said supposedly, and I wasn't being facetious.
Right.
So what I learned as I did the research on this is, even though you see this everywhere, there is actually no written evidence that that term came from that game.
Maybe that sports writer had a publicist.
You know what I mean? If they had that in 1907.
Hey, who knows? There's some guy out there.
So where did Crimson Tide come from? So for the truth, let's go to another resource. I'm going to go to an article by Andy Wittry, actually dated September 17th, 2020. So this is very timely, on ncaa.com. Andy is a writer who's written for SI.com and Sporting News, amongst others. He's a graduate of Indiana University. He has a series of articles that discuss the history of nicknames for several other colleges, including the Arizona Wildcats, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, and my Virginia Tech Hokies. So I had a chance to sample his work, seeing what he had to say about Virginia Tech to kind of verify. For me, that was something that was important to see the truth. Mm-hmm. So Andy's article is entitled, How Alabama Got the Nickname Crimson Tide. So quoting heavily here from Andy's article, former Birmingham Age Herald sports director Hugh Doc Roberts is credited with giving Alabama its nickname, according to the University of Alabama Athletics website. From here, he repeats the story from Laura Testino's article. But when he looked for a copy of the article from the Birmingham Age Herald after that game, he did find a recap. It wasn't actually from the Birmingham Age Herald, but it was in the Tuscaloosa News on the Tuesday following the game. And he's quoted at length describing the game, but no reference to the words crimson or tide in the story.
Ooh.
So he's objective in this, discusses that, perhaps the Tuscaloosa News didn't publish the entire story, because, again, he worked for another newspaper, but it would mean that they unknowingly left out a portion where Alabama would get its future nickname. So perhaps that happened, or perhaps, it just, as a lot of these, we're going to see a lot of folklore, and I think in a good way, comes up with this. So where does the term, as we look through this, obviously, Crimson Tide does show up. We're going to see something that I think it evolved from. So quoting again from Andy's article, the following paragraph comes from a recap after Alabama's 3-0 win over Clemson in October 1909, where Alabama scored the game's only points on a 50-yard field goal. The thin red line finally worked its way enough to their opponent's goalpost to try for a placement goal, reported the Tuscaloosa Times-Gazette. So I think that the thin red line comment's very important. Mm-hmm. We'd see this often about this time discussing. In World War I, you saw this term a lot, the thin red line of courage, of soldiers giving their blood to fight the enemy, to fight their opponent. Mm-hmm. So I think that might be the key from where it comes from.
Yeah.
So Andy continued his research and found the first reference of Crimson Tide. Using the database from newspapers.com, which I will bring up later when I discuss Auburn, the earliest evidence he could find of the phrase Alabama Crimson Tide was published on November 24th, 1914 in the Jackson State Tribune. And I'm going to read from that article.
Okay.
Ole Miss, with a heavy and experienced squad, opened the 1933 season with a 6-6 deadlock with the Southwestern Lynx. After that upset, the Mississippians swamped State Teachers College and held Alabama's Crimson Tide to a 0-0 tie, spanked Marquette's Golden Avalanche 7-0, and in the annual homecoming game turned back Swanee's Mountain Men 44-0. So a couple things I wanted to point out from that. It sounds like football was really boring.
I was going to say.
You see a 6-6 deadlock, a 0-0 tie, and a 7-0 tie.
And don't forget that huge 3-0 win.
Right, but then a 44-0.
Jeez.
And also just there seems to me a lot of terms that if you used incorrectly could, if you used with a certain pronunciation, would sound dirty, like the Golden Avalanche and Swanee's Mountain Men. However, most importantly, we see the use, the first time in print, of Crimson Tide.
So this wasn't their, what do you call it? Their mascot or their, like right now, that's their official name, or what do you even call it? Right. What is that called? The Crimson Tide is their what?
Is their nickname.
Nickname. So that wasn't their official nickname back then.
Wasn't then. And I'll get to some of their official nicknames as I kind of summate where I think Crimson Tide officially came from. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I think it's important to note here who popularized the term Crimson Tide. So we don't see another reference, according to Andy. We don't see this Crimson Tide reference again until 1919, in which Henry Hardin Zip with two P's, by the way, Newman, became the sports editor of the Birmingham News. He was also referenced in Laura Testino's article. So he's credited with making the nickname mainstream and probably, quoting here, popularized the name more than any other writer. So he's the youngest sports editor in the South when he began working, according to the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. His bio reads, he was a prime motivator behind the establishment of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. So sounds like a guy here that once that term got out there, we see why it was popular, but not necessarily where it came from.
Yeah.
So what I found is there's not a smoking gun. There doesn't appear to be a definitive quote that starts it. Everyone points back to that game in 1907, but you can't find it anywhere.
Well, do you think, since you've done all this research, because of everyone I almost feel like because of everyone pointing back to that game, and the reason I was really driving to try to figure out was there some sort of thing that made it come up in that game, and it doesn't seem like there was that we can remember. It almost gives it more credence that maybe that is where it came from, because it's just it seems like a random game.
It could be, and I think that's a very plausible option for it. So, quoting again from Andy's article. Prior to the adoption of the nickname Crimson Tide, newspaper accounts from the early 1900s called Alabama simply the Alabama football team, Crimson, Crimson and White, the Alabama 11, and also their first nickname was the Thin Red Line, another war reference which was used to describe Alabama teams. So this is my take on it is it's the evolution of Thin Red Line. You take Thin Red Line, you add crimson to it because that's a pretty close color. The team gets bigger. It gets better. It starts to build. Right. And you can just you can feel that Robert Bankett enthusiasm about Alabama. We're not a Thin Red Line.
That's right.
We're a Crimson Tide.
Yeah, and it also has the same three syllables. Thin Red Line, Crimson Tide. It kind of rhymes. You could see... I think you got something there. Yeah.
So again, everyone seems to point back to an article after the 1907 game that was a 3-3 tie, I believe, between Alabama and Auburn. Can't find this article anywhere. My take is that it's probably an evolution of Thin Red Line evolving into Crimson Tide as the team got bigger and better.
And so, yada, 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 some guy screaming Roll Tide in my face when I had an Auburn shirt on. So why is that?
Well, thank you very much. I'll tell you. So going back to our original article from Laura Testino, and before we get into that, one of my personal favorite things, because I haven't had it yelled in my face, is the term Roll Tide.
Yeah.
And I like it because it is a phrase that can mean anything.
Right.
It can be a cry of joy. It can be a taunt. It could be a greeting to a friend.
Yeah. I just feel like it's one of those things that if you're in Alabama and you're a fan or alum or whatever, you just punctuate anything you say with it. You can say, I'm going to go to the store, Roll Tide. You just kind of add it there to the end.
Yeah.
There's something nice about that.
Yeah, so back to the original article, Can I Get a Roll Tide? The history of the popular phrase. Laura writes, Roll Tide is less straightforward to decipher than the classic Go mascot or Go team name that is a general phrase of support of one school sports team. If that were the case, Crimson Tide supporters would shout, Go Elephants, which is the mascot of the football team. And I'll tell you the history of that here shortly. Also, the article describes an ESPN commercial showing people saying Roll Tide to one another, doing different things, heading into a convenience store.
Oh, that's maybe why I'm thinking about that.
Shaking hands, getting a speeding ticket, passing ketchup, winning a pageant.
Those ESPN commercials are so
Yeah.
influential and probably seared into my brain.
Right. And Laura quotes from a University of Alabama alum saying, it's far beyond football. It means more than just go Alabama or go Bama. It's that we're a family and we have something to join around.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And, I'm a Kentucky fan, as I mentioned before, and we say, go Big Blue, or Big Blue Nation. I mean, but I have to admit, Roll Tide is probably the gold standard of these.
It is. And I, in a very lower level, can see if I'm walking around with a Virginia Tech shirt on, I'll have someone just walk up to me and just say Hokies.
Right.
And we know that, it's not Roll Tide level of things. I almost feel bad comparing the level of intensity and success, with that. But that's as close as I can get with it.
Hokies versus Roll Tide. Hey, listen, man, nothing to sneeze about in Hokie land.
So, but still, where does it come from? So, like Crimson Tide, there doesn't appear to be a smoking gun. But I did some digging, and I think someone has found, potentially, the origin of Roll Tide.
Ooh.
I'm going to go to an article by CJ Sexnator on rollbamaroll.com entitled, The Mysterious Origins of the Phrase Roll Tide.
Oh, I like when it's mysterious.
Yeah. Quoting from his article, we are all reasonably familiar with the genesis of the various traditions associated with Alabama football, but it recently occurred to me that the origin of the phrase Roll Tide is oddly unaccounted for. Obviously, it's derived from the moniker Crimson Tide, which most agree was bequeathed upon the team due to a newspaper description in 1907.
Yeah.
So again, see how prevalent that is.
Yep.
So the phrase appears in Alabama's fight song, Yay Alabama. It was composed by an Alabama engineering student, Ep Sykes, following the 1926 Rose Bowl. But on CJ's research, he saw that when he looked up the original sheet music, the phrase Roll Tide is nowhere in it.
Oh.
So that's something that's been added throughout the years. So as CJ continued his research, he has a theory on where the Roll Tide came from. And he stumbled upon a clue, a very popular sea shanty in the Alabama area, Roll Alabama Roll, that tells the story of the CSS Alabama. Quoting again from CJ, the merchant raider had an illustrious career during the Civil War before being sunk by the USS Kearsarge in June of 1864. So here is a quick snippet of that song.
Roll, Alabama, roll. Down Mersey where she sailed forth. Roll, Alabama, roll. To destroy the commerce of the North. Oh, roll, Alabama, roll.
So as you see, listen to that, I think it's very plausible
Yeah.
that could be why it was added
Yeah.
to the song. So the only thing that I think makes it not plausible is since a ship was involved, there should be something about people being flogged
Right.
or beaten over a barrel.
Or flotsam and jetsam.
Yeah, so that seems a little odd, but
Agreed.
again, it's plausible. So is this the explanation for Roll Tide? I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
think it's plausible. But I actually really don't care. I still, again, because it hasn't been used against me in a negative way, I love the way the Alabama fans use
I do too.
Roll
And
Tide.
you know what I really like is that there isn't a smoking gun and that it nobody really knows, and it sort of just seeped into the subconscious and got to the song. It got out there, and it kind of works for what it is. I mean, it's about, when I hear Roll Tide, I don't picture a football team. I picture Alabama Nation or whatever that is.
You pick the fans and the people.
The fans and the people. And so I kind of do like that it doesn't come down to this one guy that came up with this thing and wrote it. It's, I think, maybe this guy put it in this article or said it after a game. Somebody heard it. I like your thing about Thin Red Line, but somebody said Crimson Tide, and next thing you know, it just became this collective in the conscience thing. And frankly, as a guy that doesn't have a dog in the fight with Auburn, Alabama, I love Roll Tide. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll somehow make sure that Robert Banquette never hears that portion of our episode.
He doesn't listen to our show.
He probably doesn't.
I know that. He's too busy with whatever it is he does.
So to wrap up on University of Alabama, I want to address the elephant in the room, pun intended. After all the talk of Thin Red Lines and Crimson Tides, why is an elephant, Big Al, the mascot for University of Alabama? So this is actually from the BryantMuseum.com discussing traditions of the University of Alabama. Story of how Alabama became associated with the elephant goes back to a 1930 season when Coach Wade Wallace had assembled a great football team. After a victory over University of Mississippi, they were described by writer Everett Strupper of the Atlanta Journal, describing the game as Ole Miss was battling it back against them. At the end of the quarter, the earth starts to tremble. There was a distant rumble that continued to grow. Some excited fan in the crowds bellowed, "Hold your horses, the elephants are coming," and out stamped this Alabama varsity. So
nice.
From there, they were described for a little while as red elephants, referring to the color of their jerseys.
Yeah.
But eventually, Crimson Tide took over. I think it's better. I think there's just something about it.
Crimson Tide is awesome. And thank you. I'm glad you added the elephant part because I've never understood that, but it totally fits.
Yeah. And it's the one thing that is definitive out of this is where the elephant came from.
Well, I've got another definitive one. So why do elephants wear red toenail polish?
I don't know. Why do elephants wear red toenail polish?
So they can hide in cherry trees. My dad used to tell me that one.
It's a solid dad.
Yeah, thanks.
And now it's time for new slang.
So for this week's new slang, the word is sus.
Sus.
And that's a word that I recently feel like I've been seeing, and I heard my son saying it this weekend, and I was like, okay, what is this new? I'm like, I feel like I've heard it. I feel like it's familiar. Something about it I didn't like because I'm like, sus. It just sounds weird.
Right.
So I decided to try to find out what it meant.
Okay.
I found out what it meant. We're going to talk about it. Do you know this one? Have you been hearing this?
I had not heard it or seen it until you mentioned it to me earlier today.
Yeah.
And as with when you often hear a word for the first time, you see it all over the place.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately was doing something on social media, which is awful. But by the way, shout out to our great social media sites on Twitter and Instagram at Speaksies. Look us up. We put a lot of time and effort into that. I saw someone describing something, and it was listed as sus AF.
Yeah. So the AF you can figure out.
Yeah.
The sus thing, I guess I thought, man, it's not good, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I hear my son saying it. Is it short for some sort of bad word? I don't know. It's just my hackles went up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and tell you what it means.
Okay.
Sus is an abbreviation for suspicious.
Oh.
And it's often used by players of a game called Among Us.
Okay.
Which I've recently started hearing about, and it refers to players that are suspected of being an imposter, and that's one of the roles in the game. So I will say I did stop short of actually trying to understand this game. The closest that I can see, it's a very popular game right now, is that it's a kind of a whodunit sort of thing.
Right.
So you've got all these little players in a little room.
Right.
It's sort of like Clue.
Right.
Who killed who. And I really don't know how the game works, but if you are starting to think one of the players might be the player. So if you think the red player is it, you might say to the rest of the group chat,
okay,
red is sus.
Okay.
So this game Among Us has really spiked in popularity. So again, I found this, I don't think I mentioned, on one that's come up a couple times recently, Grammarphobia.
Okay.
And they said that sus hit a wave of popularity around the time this game got popular in August of 2020. the term sus became a trending expression during in-game chats to call out other players.
Ah.
And oh, by the way, so this is pretty timely because this one just hit. And just last month, AOC did a Twitch live stream, which was one of the biggest of all time. Mm-hmm. And she played this game Among Us. And in it, she said, you know, she was calling people sus.
Right.
And a lot of people watch this and a lot of people have seen that. So it's even gotten even more, popular. So again, just a headline that I never thought I would see, but in 2020, it's no big deal, which is AOC's debut Twitch stream is one of the biggest ever.
Okay.
And she's genuinely pretty good at Among Us, apparently.
Well, good for her.
So she's apparently crushing it. And she also, the stream peaked at 435,000 viewers at the time of her first match. And she was there to encourage viewers to vote. Mm-hmm. So we're going to get out that gamer vote. And now, Steve, I know that listeners of the podcast will know that you are an avid gamer. So have you been playing this one, or I assume you have, or no?
I haven't, but I do have an update. I heard that because her Twitch stream was so large that she actually then donated some of her viewers to other streams that didn't do as well and evened it out. So that was very good of her to do that.
That is, that's very AOC of her. So very good. So also I want to mention the top entry in Urban Dictionary for sus was from user Neon Kiwi, and it was defined as suspicious but more lit. So did the use of sus originate with the game Among Us? No. I know I've heard this before. It's been used sporadically shockingly in rap, which all these come from. Yeah. And like some Adult Swim cartoon called Loiter Squad, which I've never heard of.
Yeah. And I won't watch.
No. Yeah. And so Know Your Meme, which is where I got this from, goes on to show how the term sus really did explode through a meme account. So you were saying you saw it as a meme. And so basically this is how it went. It's in this game. People started saying it. It started blowing up through memes. I'm not going to go through and, if you want to see the memes, go to knowyourmeme.com.
Yeah, and I don't.
So before we get to the thumbs up, thumbs down portion, I did want to mention something else. So as I was thinking about this, I was like, why does this term it sounds familiar.
Okay.
And I realized that it's very similar to a term that I actually like and use, suss out. I say that sometimes and people don't always know what I'm talking about, but I was curious if there was a connection to sussing something out. Like, do you use that or?
No, but you've triggered a memory in me in a good way. That's something I believe my mom used to say. That is like a mom phrase of, she's trying to suss out something.
Yeah. And I use it as well. So that's, I guess the mom side of me, but to suss out is a slang verbal phrase, which means to investigate or check into or figure out something.
Okay.
So I'll use it if I'm trying to figure something out, just like it says, I'm going to try to suss this out. Never thought of where that came from. According to the American Heritage Dictionary and Merriam-Webster, they suggest that sus, S-U-S-S, is derived from the word suspect. So it's the same sort of root. The expression suss out originated in Britain in the 1960s, according to a Dictionary of Slang and Unconventional English by Eric Partridge. In that dictionary, it lists several other uses of sus, S-U-S-S, a verb from the 1920s meaning to suspect, a 1970s noun meaning suspicion, as in he was arrested on sus.
Right.
And a 1980s noun meaning knowledge, as in they've got sus. So the OED has similar citations for sus. So this has been around for quite some time. There's actually much further we could go on the etymology of the word suspect.
Right.
But we can maybe save that for our true crime episode. So Steve, with all that being said, where do you stand on sus as a slang word?
So a lot of terms that you've thrown around, video games, AOC, words that normally don't trigger the best reaction in me.
Yeah.
You did say something that reminded me of my mom, and I love my mom. Mom, if you listen to this, I love you very much. And I because it reminds me of my mom, I'm going to give sus a thumbs up.
Good. Well, that's a great reason to get a thumbs up for a word. I'm going to give this one, Now I feel bad, but I am going to give it a thumbs down. And the reason is because I like sus out. I like people also using the full words when I don't think you need sus. So, well, I guess that's what you're saying is you like sus out. But sus itself, you're going to go ahead and give the thumbs up to as well.
Sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to give it a thumbs down, though. Not to be difficult.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand. I don't want my kids. If you can say sus, just say suspect. And that's cranky dad talking. And that's our new slang.
So for our last phrase from the Iron Bowl rivalry of Alabama and Auburn, we're going to look at a phrase from Auburn University. Auburn University is a research and land-grant university in Auburn, Alabama. Some more facts on these guys. 30,000 students. Colors are burnt orange and navy blue. Nicknamed the Tigers' mascot, Obby the Tiger. However, their battle cry is War Eagle.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the origins of that today.
So about the same size school, if I remember correctly, to Auburn.
Yeah,
to Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah, very close in size. They began football in 1892, have produced some great football players, including Bo Jackson.
Oh, that's right.
Who we will show our old man ages again of kids these days don't understand how phenomenal Bo Jackson was. He was like watching a real-life Paul Bunyan in action. Outsized tales about him, but they all seem to be true.
Yep, and the great thing about Bo Jackson is, not to get off on too much of a tangent, but I remember my dad telling me stories about Jim Thorpe, and I remember reading about Jim Thorpe, but the difference with Bo Jackson is there is video footage of you can see him throwing out a guy at home plate from the warning track, and you can see him looking like a video game character playing football.
Yeah.
So it's out there. Check out the 30 for 30 on him. It's great.
It's tremendous. So in terms of football championships, Auburn University, not as many as Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 championships in 1957 and 2010 that are consensus. There's several other ones that are kind of claimed. It's hard to explain, but they are, including one undefeated season in 1993 when they weren't allowed to play due to a suspension. So in terms of championships, Auburn is trailing Alabama. However, I think that's one of the things I like about Auburn is it gives them a chip on their shoulder.
Right.
And they're also a land-grant university like my home school, Virginia Tech. So their battle cry is War Eagle. I think it's used a lot in the way that Roll Tide is. You and I are familiar with a national radio program that years ago, I guess this is an elephant in the room to get out of, people would kind of add war to whatever they felt like adding. And I think part of the reason they did that is Auburn is the Auburn Tigers, very clearly.
Right.
Their mascot is a tiger, but their battle cry is War Eagle.
Right.
And it's never made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, me neither. And that's why it was also hilarious hearing people just war anything because, hey, if Auburn can do it, why can't we? But maybe there is a story behind it.
Yeah, and a little extra special affection I have for this is my daughter's spring softball league that ended up going late into summer.
Oh, right.
This year we were the Auburn Tigers. So explaining to the kids that we're the Tigers, but we cry War Eagle was fun. But
Did you know the answer back then?
I thought I did.
Oh,
but
okay.
I turns out I might not be sure.
Well, I have to also give you a quick anecdote. Speaking of your daughter's softball team, which was a couple years ago when she was on a team previously, I had never been to one of these, and I show up and you're wearing a University of Kentucky hat, and I was so confused. Do you remember how confused I was? I was like, because Steve's I've been a UK fan since you've known me. I've worn the hats, the shirts, everything else, and I know you're obviously a Tech guy. Seeing you wear the UK hat, I really felt like I had stepped into another dimension until you said, it's my daughter's softball team. And then everything snapped into place, but it was weird. And then she hit a home run. First, as I'm walking up, and I was like, wow, she's really good at softball.
Good job, Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah.
Another reason to like them. So one of the things, again, that I liked about the kind of fractured logic of Tigers to War Eagle was it allowed me to continue the logical thread. And when our team would be successful, we would make crab pinchers with our hands and then do a crab dance to shuffle. So we were the Tigers who cry War Eagle, who made crab pinchers and probably confused a lot of parents on our team and on the opposing team. But enough about me. The history of War Eagle. So to kind of give a summary where we're going to go, it seems at first that there's one clear legend. But as we dig a little bit more, there's multiple legends that go with it.
Wow.
And at the end, I'll give my thoughts of what I think the actual story is. So first, we're going to go to Auburn's website at auburn.edu/War Eagle. I'm going to read from there. War Eagle is Auburn's battle cry, not a mascot or nickname. The phrase has a long history and deep significance among the Auburn family. The most popular legend about the battle cry dates back to the first time Auburn met Georgia on the football field in 1892 and centers on a spectator who was a Civil War veteran. In the stands with him that day was an eagle for the old soldier that the old soldier had found on a battlefield during the war. He had kept it as a pet for almost 30 years. According to witnesses, the eagle suddenly broke free and began majestically circling the playing field. As the eagle soared, Auburn began a steady march towards the Georgia end zone for a thrilling victory. Elated at their team's play and taking the bird's presence as an omen of success, Auburn students and fans began to yell "War Eagle" to spur on their team. At the game's end, the eagle took a sudden dive, crashed into the ground, and died.
Wow. Didn't see that coming.
Did not see that coming either. However, the article continues to say that War Eagle represents the proud Auburn spirit, and that is the reason why.
And Auburn won 2-0 after getting a safety.
They did, after a 7-hour game.
Right.
So, however, this has not always been what was posted on Auburn's website. So I refer to an article from the Montgomery Advertiser from 2018 that recounts the story of War Eagle that we just heard, but also provides another story from a 1914 contest against the Carlisle Indians. The Auburn football team would have their quarterback yelled "Bald Eagle," letting the rest of the team know that a play would be run at a particular imposing defensive player.
Got it.
Spectators, however, thought the quarterback was saying "War Eagle."
Okay.
And it stuck from there.
Now that seems more believable.
Seems a little bit, but they also add another version of the War Eagle story from Indian lore. And this legend says that War Eagle was a name given to a large golden eagle by the Plains Indians because the eagle furnished feathers for their use in their war bonnets. And that during one game against Georgia, again, Georgia comes back up, a student dressed in his military uniform noticed something drop from his hat. Bending down, he saw it was the metal emblem of an eagle that had been loosened while he cheered. Someone asked him what he had found, and he replied, "It's a war eagle." History was made as the cry echoed through the stadium.
This is like a Know Your Onions.
It is a little bit.
It's like 3 potential. Actually, now we might be up to 4 now.
So actually, after finding this and seeing this link wasn't active, I wanted to do one more check to make sure.
Yeah.
So I dug around the auburn.edu website and found one more listing on their website that provides the first legend, the second legend, the third legend, and now a fourth legend.
Okay.
So the fourth legend goes, some say Auburn fans adopted the War Eagle phrase because of its connection with Saxon warriors who used the yell as their battle cry. When buzzards would circle the battlefield settling among the dead, the Saxons began calling them War Eagles.
Oh, okay.
So going back, I was inspired to figure out the truth here. We see 4 legends. I decided to go take a cue from Andy Whitty, who helped find some of the truth behind the Crimson Tide nickname.
Right.
So I went to newspapers.com and did some research on the first uses of this term to see if I could figure out where War Eagle came from. So some of the earliest uses I found of the term War Eagle were in the year 1864, referring to a Confederate general by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Oh, yeah.
So he's known for a few things. He was a very successful, prominent Confederate general from Tennessee during the Civil War. And after the Civil War, he kept busy when he founded the KKK.
That's where I know that name.
Yeah, so that's where he stands out from. So there's several articles.
I knew he was a little sus.
Yeah, I would say he's sus AF in that. So a couple articles refer to him as the War Eagle, including one when he's asking for people to volunteer for him. So I want to be very clear about this. War Eagle does not come back to Bedford Forest, you found the KKK. Not saying that
Thank
at all.
God.
I am going to be direct about that. But it was interesting to find that reference.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So going forward, I find first reference of War Eagle in print in Alabama from the Montgomery Advertiser in the year 1921. I shall read the description to you today. Get Georgia is the tiger's cry. The campus is alive with the yells and enthusiasm of the students of the plains. Old Auburn is bubbling over like the little fellow when the circus comes to town. Just can't wait for Saturday to come. All night long, one who happens to be up for the various reasons, many Auburn students stay up, can hear a distant call of War Eagle or nearby one of Eat 'em Up Tiger, Give 'em Hell Auburn, and Fight 'em Big Gang.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so the Big Gang didn't stick. Seems like War Eagle did.
Wow.
So that's the first use we find of it, but it doesn't give us really any evidence.
Yeah, we still don't know which of those four, if
Yeah.
any of them, is right.
So this is what we come down to. Civil War vet with the eagle dying at the end of the game.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't believe that one.
Yeah.
I'm shaking my head. It just sounds fake.
People mishearing bald eagle and crying war eagle.
Right.
The Plains Indian feather.
Yeah.
And then the Saxons showing up very late in this story.
Here's my thing. I feel like the first one, I just don't buy it. It sounds like fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the other ones just feel like something that somebody would try to get people to do.
Right.
Like you'd say, hey, let's start this new thing because of the Saxons. It's like,
Yeah.
you're not going to get a whole stadium doing it. I think I could see it being this quarterback yelling, Bald Eagle, because you know how they yell like
Yeah.
that. And people in the stands start yelling. Next thing you know, every game after every game, you're yelling at. So that's, if I was playing Know Your Onions, that
Yeah.
would be my guess. But I have no idea. Who knows? It could be any of them.
And nobody knows. It's a smoking
Oh,
gun.
okay,
so
good.
I would say I throw out the fourth one. The Saxon one sounds
Right.
just too made up.
Yeah.
The eagle falling, feather falling sounds too convoluted.
Right.
Frankly, your argument is winning me over for mishearing bald eagles.
Were
war
you going,
eagle.
though, for the first one,
But
maybe?
I like the
first
first
one's
one.
a nice romantic one. I want it to be the first one.
Mainly because it's such a bad story of them sticking with the eagle after this buildup of the eagle rallying them, and this poor old this veteran watches his pet eagle die in front of
and
everyone.
everybody starts yelling War Eagle. Well, that doesn't even explain why they even yell War Eagle. I guess
Yeah.
because was in the war.
Well, it was a war eagle.
Oh, it was a War Eagle. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but doesn't Auburn still do this sometimes? Like have a bird fly? I feel like there was a story that where they had tried to do this and the bird slammed against like a plexiglass or something. Yeah.
So I am pretty impressed by that. I would be nice to have I think a war eagle is a good thing to have with you. And again, a lot like Crimson Tide, not a smoking gun, but I like the legends. And sometimes we talk about other things. I don't like folk etymology for colleges and things like this. I love the folk etymology
I'm fine with
I think
it.
it's
Like,
great.
I don't think this is one that we need to like call up our friend Barry Popick and say,
Yeah.
we need you to get to the bottom of this so that the real people can get their credit. I think this is one where let's give it to any of them, but the old guy. And frankly, I just wish I had heard this podcast before some guy was yelling Roll Tide in my face, because I would have just turned to him and said, War Eagle.
Yeah. And I'm sure nothing bad would have happened after
I wouldn't
that.
be here right now. I'd
Yeah.
probably be dead.
As evidenced here, Scott and I, we know a little bit about this that we shared with you today, but we don't have a real dog in the fight. So we've brought in somebody who's actually from Alabama who can actually give us a little bit more insight and help us have a good time as we do it. Comedian Dusty Slay.
This is Robert Bankett, host of True Facts with Robert Bankett. Before we proceed, a word about Leroy Lounge. Named after the mostest horse that ever was, Leroy Lounge in Old Cloverdale is my favorite bar in all of Montgomery. Leroy has a rotation of 18 craft beers on tap, including beers from great Alabama breweries like Blue Pants, Fair Hope, and Straight to Ale. In addition, they have a great selection of custom cocktails, including the Clothespin, the Lando, and my personal favorite, the Smoke and Choke.
Leroy is located at 2752 Bootlear Avenue, Montgomery, just around the corner from the El Rey Burrito Lounge. Learn more about Leroy at LeroyLounge.com. That's LeroyLounge.com. When I want a craft beer on draft or a great cocktail, I go to Leroy, the mostest bar in all of Montgomery. Don't forget about Whiskey Wednesdays, with several fine whiskeys 50% off for your enjoyment. Leroy, the mostest bar in all of Montgomery. Our guest is one of my favorite comedians working right now. You might have seen him on Comedy Central, Jimmy Kimmel Live, or on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. If you're in Nashville, where he currently resides, he's a regular performer at the Grand Ole Opry. You can see him tomorrow night, Wednesday, November 11th, at Zany's Dusty Slade Grand Ole Comedy Show. That is, if you can get a ticket, sold out. Finally, you can hear him weekly on his podcast, We're Having a Good Time. Please welcome Dusty Slade to the program.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Dusty, thanks for joining us. And my first question is, are we going to have a good time?
Of course we're going to have a good time. We're always having a good time. You know, I like to tell people we're having a good time. I don't like to ask. You know, a lot of people will come out and they'll go, are we having a good time? Not me. I can't risk it. You know what I mean?
I love that. I did read that, and it's very smart. Let's
Yeah,
not
you
leave
never
it
wanna-
up to the audience.
You never want to ask people questions that you're not sure of the answer to. You just let them know how it's going.
Yeah.
That's like if you're on a date, you don't go, are you having fun? You go, this is great. We're having a lot of fun here.
Yeah. This is the best Applebee's I've ever been at, right?
Yes. Always. Never let them tell you. You always tell people how you feel.
Yeah, taking notes on this.
And how they feel.
So we have to ask everyone, how are things going with you in the vid? And especially as you're a tour comedian, how's that working out for you?
Honestly, it's been great for me. I mean, I was on the road so much that when I got shut down in March and April, I was like, actually, this is great. I mean, this is a nice break for me. And then I went back out in May. I went to Dallas in May. I did some shows. I think I might have been the only headliner in the country out in May. And I was like, I felt good. It was 25% capacity. I did a couple of weekends in May, a couple in June. And then the second shutdown came. And that one was a bit depressing because I was like, oh, I don't know if we're coming back.
Yeah.
I wanted to quit comedy. I was already deciding I was going to do something new. And then I got to go back in mid-August to Rhode Island. And when I came off stage, I had my body was like buzzing. You know, I felt like I was on drugs. And I was like, man, this is awesome. And so I love comedy. So I'm happy to be back.
Well, I have to follow up on that. Why were you thinking about quitting comedy, if you don't mind me asking? It seems like you're doing great.
I know. That's just what the unsurety does. Like, I was just like, I was in this place where I'm like, if we're not going to be allowed to do comedy again, I got to do something. I can't just, The first 2 months was an amazing break. I enjoyed.
Right.
The second one was like, I'm bored. I'm going to have to get some kind of job. Fortunately for me, you know, I had been saving money. So it wasn't like a money thing. It was like just outright, like, I can't be this bored. I need some purpose. The first quarantine, I set up all my bird feeder. I got into birds, you know, I set up all my bird feeders, my bird houses, traps, you know what I mean? I got it out there and I was into it. And I planted plants. I grew squash. I grew potatoes. I was like, I stood out my back door looking at birds for so long. My neighbor put up an 8-foot privacy.
Yeah. Well, I got a bird feeder too. And it's something. And then I heard someone say it's actually really good for you to just spend time just looking at birds or nature or whatever. It's like its own therapy or something. Yeah. So
it's so great. And my neighbor did put up an 8-foot privacy fence. And it's like, in my neighborhood, it's all 6 foot, except just behind my house is an extra 2 feet. Yeah. And I wasn't looking in his windows, you know, but birds are small, right? So
that's right.
I'd be out there looking, and every once in a while I'd see a little movement in his windows, you know, so I get it. And he told me one day, he's like, I'm about to get a new fence. After that, you won't have to look at me anymore. And I was trying to be all fun with him. And I was like, hey, but I like looking at you. And that fence went up quick. He's like, I got a family to protect.
Well, you kept the economy going during the shutdown. So good job.
Yeah, totally. Fence builders needed something to do too, you know?
So the subject of our show tonight is the Iron Bowl. We looked at the history of Alabama and Auburn and some of the big terms that go with that. So we want to talk to you a little bit about your personal connection to the Alabama-Auburn rivalry.
Well, I grew up in a town in Alabama called Opelika, right next to Auburn. So where I come from, you're either an Alabama fan or you went to college, but I didn't go to college, so roll tide, you know what I mean? And that's my favorite joke. I like that joke. My parents are divorced. They divorced when I was 2. My dad is a diehard Alabama fan. My mom is a diehard Auburn fan. And that's what my mom says all the time. She goes, oh, those Alabama fans, they didn't even go to that school, And the funny thing is my mom also didn't go to Auburn,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you do see that with a lot of teams. In fact, I'm wearing a University of Kentucky hat, and I didn't go there, but I'm ashamed of my college football team, and my family's from Kentucky, so it's the same sort of deal. Kind of
you can be a fan totally, but this is what gets me is the people that go, "We beat you, we beat you," and it's like, well, they beat it, they beat them,
right?
Yeah,
I didn't get beat, and you didn't win.
Right. That is true. I like to take credit when we win, but not when we lose. That's see, I say we, but
I say all these things, but if that's how you want to be, I don't care. You can be a we won. You know what I mean? Yeah. Don't bother, man.
The Louisville UK rivalry gets a little heated and people get kind of ugly to each other. I assume it's the same with Auburn, Alabama. Did you see that, or was it more? We talked in the show a little bit about is it in good. What is it in good spirits or whatever, or is it hateful?
It depends on the people, but I feel like it's mostly hateful. And all right, so my dad and he has a friend, and they watch the Alabama game together every time that they can. Which is multiple games a season. Once in a while, one of them has something to do, but they sit. My friend, my dad's friend, he looks like. Sam Elliott from any Sam Elliott movie.
Yeah.
He drinks beer all the time. He has a whole ritual. He brings a case of beer over. He puts one beer in the freezer, the rest in the fridge. He drinks one. And then when he goes to get his new beer, he takes that one out of the freezer, puts a new one in the freezer, and then drinks that one. Right? He has a whole ritual. And they love to watch the game. They're both very nice people. But my dad had a guy over one time that was just hunting on the land, and he was an Auburn fan. So he just stopped in for a minute in between, hunting. He's like, I'm about to go back out to the woods, but he sat down and watched the game, and Auburn scored, and the guy started cheering, and my dad's friend was like, oh, I'm leaving. And he left, and they were even like, hey, I'm about to leave. I'm about to get out of here. He goes, nah, I done made up my mind now. And he left, and he went and sat in his truck at his house and listened to the game on the radio.
I love the spitefulness of that, just the pure bitterness, I guess.
Yeah, he would rather listen to it on the radio than sit around that guy for 1 second. And I like Alabama. That's really the team I pull for more often. I have a weird thing. People hate it. But I'm just like, for me, I'm like, listen, I don't live in Alabama anymore. I like to see a team from Alabama win. So if Auburn is in the national championship, I'm going to pull for them. Ultimately, I want Alabama to do it. But if it's got to be Auburn, hey, I'm there to cheer. But I don't like watching Alabama with Alabama fans unless it's my dad. I don't, because they're so cocky and they're so and I'm just like, we're not really out there doing anything. Like, they're just so hateful. They hate the other team. And I don't care if people hate the other team, but it's hard for me to cheer for the team that I'm like a underdog kind of fan at heart, except for Alabama. Yeah. Does that make sense? I just feel like Alabama as a state is the underdog. So I want us to win everything.
Well, I can't believe I keep bringing up Kentucky, but it's a similar thing. It's like with Kentucky basketball. I'm not saying that's all you got, Kentucky. I mean, there's bourbon, there's other stuff.
There's horses.
There's a lot, but
some great comedy clubs. Well, at least one that I know about is really great.
Yeah, but there is a thing of maybe feel like There you go. So you should be you know what? Let's get this guy on the board of tourism for Kentucky. That's what we need to do. But but it's like you want your state, you want that state to show up well in the thing they are known for. If you're in California, maybe you don't care as much, or New York. I mean, how many great New York football teams, you know,
right?
College teams, do you know?
But yeah, I mean, my sister lived in Montgomery for a while. She told me that she read about a story where a girl shot and killed another girl because she wasn't mad enough about the Alabama loss. Like, she wasn't even happy. She wasn't mad enough.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then, you know, there was the guy, now, you know, I don't want to step on any other questions, but, you know,
go for it.
In Auburn, there is these, you know, there's the oak trees that were out there, like 200-year-old oak trees. And that after, you know, I grew up right next to Auburn. So I used to go to Auburn all the time. In high school, Auburn was our rival, you know. So, but it's like they had these trees, and after every football game, when they would win the game, they would roll the trees. You know, they would throw toilet paper in the trees. And it was just this great thing. But this one time when Cam Newton played at Auburn, apparently someone went to the Alabama Stadium and put a Cam Newton jersey on the Bear Bryant statue.
Ooh.
And so this guy, I was listening to the Paul Feinbaum show. I don't know if you know that show, but it used to be the best. I haven't listened in a long time, but it used to be my favorite show. And this guy called in. I was listening when he called in. He was like, I poisoned those trees down there.
Oh, no.
And he did. This guy went down and put, you know, 2,4-D or whatever in the ground and killed these 200-year-old oak trees. He did some jail time for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like a crime. Holy cow.
So then they put new ones back.
Yeah.
And they brought in new ones, planted them in, like, you know, fairly good-sized trees, and they rolled them again one night. They weren't supposed to, but the students rolled them, and then some guy walks by and lights one of them on fire.
Oh, my God.
So it died. So, you know, they've had a lot of struggle with the trees.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I also like the fact, I like when adults are involved in this stuff. You know, it's one thing when you're, I mean, I was passionate about sports when I was a kid, but then I love the idea of like a 40-year-old guy, you know, killing trees.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, probably older than 40, honestly.
Right.
And the one time, you know, those car flags that you put on the back that, you know, my mom used to rock those 2 Auburn flags all the time.
Oh.
I mean, my mom's Auburn, win or lose. She's about tired of Gus Malzahn, but she's with them win or lose. And one game, we used to have season tickets. We used to go see Auburn play all the time, which is, you know, I guess it just shows that I'm just, you know, maybe I'm a bandwagon rider too, that my mom did so much to make me an Auburn fan. And I'm like, no, I like Alabama. But I think there's a bond between me and my dad. You know what I mean? So we had season tickets. We were down there. We went to one Alabama-Auburn game. This is in the 90s, Terry Bowden days. And somebody broke both of our flags off the car during the game.
Uncalled for, man.
Yeah.
I have a friend from Pittsburgh that when Pitt and West Virginia used to play, he would go down to West Virginia to see the games, but he had to strip his car of everything. He had to make it look like a neutral car because it would be broken or lit on fire.
Oh, yeah.
That's West Virginia. Everything could be lit on fire at any time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have a picture. If I can't find it on my phone, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to show you, even though this is mostly an audio podcast. I want to show you. This was, and I'm thinking this was probably 1983, and I was looking up 83, and they were saying that was one of the like best Iron Bowls ever. And we weren't at the game, but Auburn won. So if Auburn didn't win in 83, then that's not when it was. But my mom was married to my dad at the time and wanted to, she wanted to go down there. She didn't have tickets to the game, but after Auburn won, I think Alabama had won for like 10 years in a row. And then Auburn had Bo Jackson. So it might have been 82. Anyway, I was really young. And so she went down to Toomer's Corner where they roll. And she took me. And in this picture, you can see the toilet paper in my hair from where they roll it. But that's
awesome.
Yeah. So there we are. My mom's got the classic Auburn hat on, and it really shows the whole two mascot thing. I mean, the hat, there's an eagle, and on the shirt it says Tigers. But I mean,
I love it. That's so great. Thanks for showing us that.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
and my dad has, he has a pool, and he has this pool house is what it used to be when me and my stepbrothers were growing up. But now it's his Alabama room, right? So everything is just decked out Alabama. There's no organization to it. He just throws stuff on the wall, but it's just littered with stuff, newspaper clippings, and he's got an old rusty fridge in there full of a bunch of Cokes. And it's just, and then there's no heat out there. They'll have the, what is it? The gas tanks that you put on a grill, propane tanks.
Propane, yeah.
Yeah. And then I had that little heater on there. And
that's good stuff though.
That's a manly room. That's the way it should be.
I bet it smelled good in there too.
Oh, it smells like man.
it does smell good.
Man.
Yeah.
What is the smell of man?
And there's
spilled
beef
beer and propane.
spilled beer. Yeah.
Yeah. And wings, chewing tobacco, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's a bathroom in there, but they usually go outside to pee anyway.
Oh, there's nothing better than peeing in your own backyard or your own yard.
I love to pee outside. There used to be this trail of ants outside of my house. And I like to pee those ants right off the wall. They would come back, I'd pee them right off the wall, and then they'd be right back the next time I went out there. It's like they were into it. You know what I mean?
You need to work that into your act of tell people they have a good time and conclude with the benefits of urinating outside. Because it's true. There's something like reclaiming your land. And now that you have that 8-foot fence in your backyard, you can do it a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Maybe I should close with that. I used to talk about peeing on ants, and I felt like I lost the audience a bit.
You won us back. You were losing us before you brought that up, and now we're hooked back in.
Okay,
so it
good.
worked.
I've rediscovered my love of peeing outside ever since I tried to fix my downstairs toilet. It was turned into a month-long project. My problem is I don't have a good privacy fence, so there's always a little of danger involved.
Oh yeah,
like, even at night, because you're like, do you ever do the mental gymnastics of would I be arrested? And then you do, well, no, nobody can see from here.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and then you go, well, I don't know. I could get arrested, and then by that time I'm done.
Sometimes if I'm out watering the grass, I'll turn my back to my neighbor in the middle of the daytime, and then I'll pee at the same time I'm watering, hoping that maybe they don't know I'm peeing.
I like the danger.
But I think there's a stance that anybody can see you from the back and go, that dude's peeing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, what you have to do is you have to start just doing the stance while you're watering your plants. Yeah. But while you're not peeing, just lull the viewer into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Too many people have cameras now. You know, they have these ring light cameras. I went to my neighbor's house who's across the street from me, and I asked him how he liked that. And he goes, well, it's really sensitive. And then he goes, we don't pick up anything you say. And I'm like, oh no. Okay, so you do then.
Dave, that means we've heard everything.
Yeah, and I get out on the front porch having cigars, and I talk all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm definitely...
Is there a worse feeling than talking, especially when you're like just kind of shooting the shit? Maybe you're talking a little bit of maybe something you shouldn't be talking about, and then you realize, oh no, I'm being listened to right now.
Oh yeah,
that's a terrible feeling, which I've had many times because I'm a big mouth. But
yeah, well, I feel like there's always something we shouldn't be talking about, and it's like, oh dang. Like the other day, my neighbor was like, I used to smoke a lot of cigars with him, a different guy. And he's like, oh, you haven't been over in a while. And I was like, oh, my wife won't let me have cigars as much. And then he's like, oh, she won't let you have cigars. I was like, nah. And then like he drives off and I turn around and she's like right there. And I'm like, oh,
exactly. Right.
I was like, I know you just heard me tell him that, but
right. And but that's part of the deal, man. You gotta take the hit sometimes
especially with the wife has superpowers. Once the vows were stated, her hearing increased.
Yes.
Your ability to be everywhere at once happens. Right, honey?
That's true. If she popped up right now, that would be really
cool. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
It would be weird that she's at your house, but that's that's next year.
I had a question for Dusty. So I was listening to your last podcast, and I really related to something, which is where you started the podcast. You said, you know what? I just went on 20 minutes. And then I started it over because I was losing my train of thought. I don't know, talking about a guy milking dog or drinking dog milk or something. I'm like, whoa, where's that lost footage? When does that make an appearance? First of all, you can't tease us like that. But
and which neighbor was doing it?
Well, this was an old guy I used to go to church with, and that's a story that'll be fun. I mean, this is what happened. I went to this church retreat one time. I'll just tell you, if you don't mind. And,
Please, I'd love to hear it.
And we went, it's just some men. I had just quit drinking, and I was trying to connect with some people that weren't drinking all the time.
Yeah.
And so I went on this church camping trip, just being a bunch of dudes, we're out there grilling up. I mean, there's a guy out there he knows how to cook everything. We're not roughing it out there. We're sleeping in tents, but we're eating better than I eat normally.
Right.
But we get, after a couple of days, no cell phones, you're just talking a lot. This guy brought up, what would you do for $1 million kind of thing? That kind of game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what they're about to ask. This is a bunch of church folk. And I'm like, I had a job I hated. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know. There's not much I wouldn't do for $1 million. And
Sure.
He said, would you eat a piece of poop the size of a fun size Snickers bar? And I always say that I was relieved because I know for $1 million I would eat a king size dookie, And then, and I was like, yeah, of course I would. If it meant my boss selling pesticides would never get to yell at me again, yeah, I'm eating a fun size piece of poop.
Absolutely.
But the guy goes, no, he said, I would never defile my body that way. Right. And really put me in like a weird place. And I'm like, all right, dude, well, obviously you have a better life than me right now. So later on, though, they're talking and they start telling stories on each other. And they start because they're all friends. I'm new to the group.
Right.
So he starts telling a story on this guy who wouldn't defile his body and said one night they were sitting around their house and they had a dog out there that had just given birth to some puppies. And it was laying out there on the porch on its back and had those big dog nipples sticking up. And he was like, they were like, I dare you to get down and drink some of that milk out of that dog nipple.
Oh my gosh.
He goes, how much? And they ended up raising $20. So for $20, this guy got down and drank milk from a dog nipple.
Oh, that's so gross.
And I'm like, you wouldn't eat a piece of food for $1 million, but for $20, you're down here drinking dog milk?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I like that he tried to shame you after putting a hypothetical to you. And then it's like, I would never do that. But that is, I think the dog milk is way worse. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Steve?
I'm trying to think of how he made money off that because now he's done what's the smell stuff that everyone sells? I'm totally blanking.
Oh no, you mean
essential
like
oils.
Essential oils?
Yeah, some sort of like dog essential oil.
Yeah, because we sometimes talk about who was the first guy to realize that deer urine would do something for you or whatever.
Yeah, I was never that into hunting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I could just not get a deer this time around. I hated hunting. I don't hate killing animals. I don't want you to kill animals for no reason. Like my family, we killed deer, we ate them. But I was just not into the whole thing of hunting. We got to get up early in the morning. It's cold. We got to put on a bunch of camouflage. And then we just go sit. If there was a guarantee that a deer would come, I'm in. But I never saw a deer when I was
People
hunting.
love it, though. And that's the thing I don't really get either. But.
It's as a retired hunter. And by hunter, I mean somebody who would be left in a tree stand to have a nap for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
To get in the middle of nowhere, especially now as an adult, just to be away from everything's there's something about it. I see the appeal. Of course, you actually have to be able to use your weapon. And then I was always at the behest of my friend Boozy, who lives in a more rural area. One of my best friends from college, great guy. But I'm, sassy, silly boy, city boy with his bandana. And he would leave me up there. And then he'd go find all his cousins and uncles and leave me there for 4 extra hours, after it was dark and the bears are starting to swarm on me. And I'm just having a flat back in front of you, Dusty.
Wow.
I'm sorry to
Virginia,
even bring all
that's a whole different beast then. I mean, it's there's deer in Alabama, but it's not a real concern. Yeah. Virginia, that's all. You got mountains up. That's a whole different deal. My concern is falling out of the tree stand. That's not a bear. And bears terrify me since I saw the movie Revenant. I was not afraid of bears. I don't know why, but I felt like they're not that big of a deal.
Right.
But after the Revenant, I'm like, oh no.
I still haven't watched it, but I will tell you, I was not ever afraid of bears. And I told Steve, I used to love to watch the live videos from Yellowstone Park. They do a stream of just the bears eating the salmon, and I always thought, and we grew up with bears being depicted pretty friendly, like Yogi and Boo Boo and stuff. But Steve really turned me on.
I don't know if you can see my hashtag.
Oh, look at his
there.
hashtag. He's always loaded for bear because he wakes up every day
ready for a bear to attack me. It really scarred me.
He's very scared of bears.
Well, what happened? I mean, you say the bears were out, but like what happened?
Well, what actually happened was I was in Canada years ago. It was actually on my honeymoon up in Alberta.
Oh, so you were a real hunter. Like you were.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Honeymoon.
No,
okay.
These are two. I was not hunting in Alberta.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It was just Steve, his bandana.
Yeah. And my wife's regret of like, what did I get myself into? So we're in Alberta and we're at this resort. And it's April, and they have all these signs, and they're very, it's Canada. So you're thinking it's going to be nice and kind of gentle about everything. And they basically say, if you see a bear, fight for your life because it's going to kill you and eat you because they're just coming out of hibernation. If they've come this close to you, it wasn't an accident. You're probably going to die, but try to hit it in the face or punch it in the nose. And I didn't even think of that before.
Wow.
And that's now all I think about.
So friendly Canadians giving him the speech about bears did such a good job that it not only scared him for life for bears, he's been spreading the gospel of bear fear ever since.
And whenever my daughter's scared of something, I tell her what you'd be really scared of. Bears. Which is great until a bear gets loose one time and a lifetime of fear that she shoved down is going to erupt.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing like adding two fears of someone. Oh, you're afraid of this? Well, let me tell you what you should be afraid of.
Right.
Bears. You're afraid of wolves? Add bears to it. That's like during the pandemic in the beginning, we were watching the Weather Channel, and they were like, yeah, there's a pandemic. There's a lot of tornadoes. And another thing that's been happening is sinkholes. So they were like, if you're not afraid enough, just worry about the ground you're standing on disappearing.
Right. That trumps everything. Right.
Yeah. If the air doesn't get you or the tornado, it's the ground.
Dusty, a theme we have on our show this year is that people are not as far apart politically or culturally as we believe the media makes us feel. As you're out on the road in front of fans, do you find that people are really as divided as the news and Instagram and Twitter makes it sound like?
I think absolutely not. I think that I travel all over the place. I mean, I go to the most conservative places, the most liberal places. I do, I don't want to say I do the same jokes to make myself seem like I never switch it up, but I don't cater material for an audience. I just go do jokes. And I mean, South Texas, Michigan, California. I mean, and I talk to people after the shows. Now, I don't hang out with a bunch of people, but we talk, and everybody seems happy. We're all having fun. We're laughing at the same things. Liberals and conservatives grew up in trailer parks too. Not all of them, obviously, but and it's like, I don't know. I feel like until you start talking about specific things, people laugh together, they hang together. And even when people disagree, like in person, I smoke cigars a lot, and I like to sit in cigar shops. Now, generally speaking, the normal cigar clientele leans conservative. But, if someone does disagree, it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a shouting match over the internet. And the internet, that's what happens. You could go on, you could see a post, and you could be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then the first comment is, you're such an idiot. And then they tell why they're such an idiot. And then the next comment is another person saying why that person's an idiot. And then you start reading and you're like, all these things kind of make sense to me. I'm like, what is the truth?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But yeah, in person, I agree with you. And I feel like you sit down and talk to somebody. Generally, I love those YouTube videos they do. I don't remember who does it, where they have people that are completely on different sides of the spectrum, and they sit down and have a conversation, and you watch it. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much how it normally goes. But when there's that barrier of the internet, it kind of messes things up.
We need to get people together that they can urinate in a backyard together.
Right.
Totally. And that's the interesting thing about the shutdown, right? Is like they're encouraging people not to hang out with each other. And the more we're around each other, the more we can see that we're like, we are the same. It's like, I have friends that I interact with. We could all hang out together at a party. And then I go on the internet and find out they all have different views, and they seem to all hate people that have a different view than them. And I'm like, and I'll see both of them and I'm like, you guys were just hanging out. Like you just were having a good time with each other. And now you seem to hate each other.
Well, I miss live comedy and live music and all that stuff. And I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Are we ever going to have it like it used to be? I mean, you're hearing all these dire things like it'll never be the same. This is the new normal. What's your expert take on, I guess, with the comedy scene anyway?
I don't know. I mean, I it's hard to say. I mean, I kind of live like we already are back to normal. I don't know if I should say that, but I just have been around so many people since May doing shows. I mean, in May, when I was in Texas, people wanted to get their picture made with me. And I'm like, I'm just so honored that people come to my show that how am I going to be like, oh, no, I don't think so. And so I did it. And then the Sunday that I was flying home, I got worried that I was sick. Like my face started to feel hot. I was like, oh no. And the moment I got home, I was fine. And I've had several instances like that where I'm like, my chest feels like it's tightening up. I'm like, oh no, now I got it. And then I just am fine. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like the regardless of you seeing me eat that hot dog, I try to eat pretty healthy and I try to, take vitamins but I don't know. But I don't know if things will go back to normal. I mean, in some ways I see people totally being like, yeah, we're back to normal. Like you'll see, like I was in Chattanooga and it's like, you go into some place and it's like, they're like, put your mask on. And they're yelling at you and they're like, stand away from each other. And then the next minute there goes a pedal tavern by you on the street where people are drunk and sitting right across from each other yelling. So it's like, I feel like there's a portion of people that are like ready for it to be back right now.
Yeah.
And other people are like, I've still not left my house.
Yeah.
I don't know if that even gives any kind of opinion of what I think is going to happen.
Well, it's an unfair question because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You answered it.
Well, I think Dusty knows and he's holding it for himself, but that's okay. We understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I get dirty a lot. I don't wash my hands a lot. I've never been that kind of person. And I just feel like I've gotten a lot of germs and I just think my immune system's strong. I mean, I could be wrong. I could die tomorrow, but
I'm sorry you went through that hot dog. I think you're strong.
Yeah.
You got that hot dog strength.
Thank you. Yes.
Dusty, I have one last question for you, and thank you very much for being here with us. And
I'm having a great
give
time.
you a second to plug stuff too. So what is a misconception about Alabama, the state, that you'd like to address?
Well, it's hard to say, right? Because I'm always defending like Alabama and rednecks and stuff like that. And then, like one day I remember I was like on the internet, like defending some rednecks. And then I went to like a 4-way stop and I don't know what happened. We had a little confusion and this guy in this big truck rolls by and he's flipping me off. And I'm like, I was just defending you, and I don't know. I always like to think of it like the Neil Young, Leonard Skinner kind of battle, right? Like Neil Young wrote the song Southern Man, and then he wrote the song Alabama, which is slamming the South, slamming Alabama for, maybe, some things they deserve to be slammed for, right? And then Ronnie Van Zant writes a song, and his song is basically like, yeah, there's some stuff going on down here, but we're not all like this. We're jamming, we're having a good time too. And it's just like, I think the perception is that the South is just like Alabama is just backwards and hateful and just gross. And I'm like, it's some of the most beautiful country in the world. And I grew up, in a town with, Opelika is a pretty diverse town. I mean, my school was like, we were like half and half white and black. We had Opelika has a huge Korean population and we had a lot of Mexican people. And it's just like, I don't know. I grew up around so many different kinds of people that we knew about racism, obviously, but we all got along just fine. I've been punched in the face by white people and black people. You know what I mean? And
Diversity. Hashtag.
yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like I don't know. Especially since I've traveled the country and I drive a lot. I love to drive. Whenever it makes sense, I'll drive as opposed to fly. And I go through towns all over the country where I'm like, growing up, I thought rednecks were below the Mason-Dixon line. And now I'm like, oh, outside of every city is redneck.
Yeah, that's true.
And then even in New York City, like I would walk through Brooklyn and be like, oh man, they may live in one of the biggest cities, like the biggest city in America, but even Brooklyn itself would be one of the biggest cities if it were separate. But I'm like, they're total redneck. There's lawn chairs out here and like inside chairs that are outside on the patio. And they, I firmly believe that in China, there is someone that the rest of the Chinese people consider a redneck. They're like, there's like a Chinese hillbilly out there somewhere and he's making moonshine and getting too loud. And the other people are like, oh, I don't know if that makes sense. That
makes total sense.
It does.
And
Chinese
I'm just going to
hillbilly.
speculate what that looks like right now. I'm going to talk to my Chinese friends to see if I can figure out who that is. Do you have any friends that have really big tires on their truck or?
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no doubt that exists to some degree in every place there is. Like I was just telling a story earlier, like my dad lives on a farm. My mom lived in a trailer park growing up. And I was talking about this family that lived there and they lived in the trailer, in a trailer. And they were like, to me, they were poor. Right. And it's like when you live in a trailer park and there's other people that you're like, oh, they're poor. Like that's extreme. You know what I mean? You go to their house and you're like, oh, your parents don't care about you at all. And
they don't even have any ants to pee on.
Right. Exactly. So I'm like, even in the trailer park, I used to have a joke where I'd say I was the rich kid in the trailer park, because we had things like parents and a door, you know what I mean? And I said, I used to have this joke where I'd say I used to get called spoiled a lot in the trailer park. That's because I had the least amount of bruises. And that's because my dad only had one arm, right? And that's all made up in a joke, but
it's a good one.
So, Dusty, what's next for you? Plug whatever you want. Where are you going to be?
Well, I'm all over the place, and my calendar really is full. I mean, in November, I got a couple of weeks off because of Thanksgiving and whatnot, but my calendar's full. My website is dustyslay.com, and I post a lot of videos on TikTok now, and I don't dance around and stuff like that. I just post stand-up videos.
Okay.
But I've gotten a pretty good following on TikTok, and so that's what I post the most on, that and Instagram, which is both at Dusty Slay. And then inside those, in my bio, is another link where I have, a link to my – so if you don't want to go to a website, go to one of those social medias, and then I have a link in the bio that links to my schedule and all sorts of stuff. I do have my show at Zany's on November 11th, Zany's in Nashville, which is a show that I host and headline. And then I usually try to bring in comics that I work with on the road that are really funny, but maybe are not being seen so much right now. So I'm trying to, give them a platform and also, make my show good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I think you might have redeemed TikTok for me.
Yeah.
So we will actually, we want to be very positive in our show. So you give me a reason to not say as many bad things about TikTok.
Well, this is what I'll say about TikTok is I thought TikTok was the dumbest thing in the world. I never wanted to get on it. And then in March, when I got shut down, I had a friend reach out to me and he goes, you should start posting some stand-up videos on TikTok. And I had an hour of comedy that I recorded that I just wanted to use for social media stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I had like 3 videos and I posted them on TikTok, and one of them instantly jumped to like 300,000 views, and I was hooked. And so this whole time I've been learning to edit better and make better videos. And now I'm kind of trying to film my sets and film crowd work moments and put on TikTok. So,
oh man, by the way, and we sat here and talked about how social media and internet's the devil, but your social media is hilarious. And
thank you.
The crowd work, the clips you have of the crowd work and stuff are great, perfectly timed and hilarious. Like Steve turned me on to your comedy, and I started checking out your Twitter and your Instagram, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. So,
thank you.
I mean, yeah.
Because I do love, I mean, I'm not a crowd work comic at all, but I do love that stuff in a way. But it's like, even when fans are like disruptive and rude, I'm still like, I'm happy because what a weird job I have. I used to sell pesticides for a living.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is great. So I'm like, who am I to call somebody stupid or get out of the show? And I'm like, I want them to have fun. I want to joke them back into the show.
Well, yeah, and that's what the one I saw for sure was great, because you're going, oh no, is he going to be mean to the person? And then it's like, not mean, it's just funny. It's kind of hey, what's going on over here? And then bringing them into the show. It's hilarious.
I did want them to leave, by the way. I know what I just said, but I did want them to leave because they were up front. They're like a middle-aged couple. They're both wearing football jerseys, and they've been drinking all day, clearly, and they're just kind of flirting with each other. And then he's like, I'm about to get laid tonight. And that's why I was like, well, you better get out of here then.
Yeah. That was so good.
Go get laid now, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, my show's good, but hey.
Yeah.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a longer clip of me talking to them, but I took out, I took the funniest chunk.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't stop. I was like, listen, you have to look at me now. You have to look at me and listen to me. You get to hang out with each other all the time. I'm not always with you.
Right.
They probably flamed out that night. That was like the height of their passion.
Yeah.
Win. Well, Dusty, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Best of luck to you. Stay healthy, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you guys. Great to see you. We're having a good time.
All right, well, that was our conversation with comedian Dusty Slay, and that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. We had a good time. He told us we were, and we did. So I want to say thank you to some great listeners who have left us reviews on Apple Podcast. We always appreciate your 5-star rating and review, and if you write one, we will read it on the show. So I don't know why my voice made that sound, but I'm going to read a comment that Linda left us. Fascinating, fun, and funny. I absolutely love discovering the strange origin of phrases, and I love a good laugh, so this show is absolutely perfect. I thoroughly enjoy the banter, the knowledge drops, and the guests. And one more from Mouth Dork, a deep dive into fascination. This podcast is incredible. Just listen to the Don't Throw the Baby Out with the Bathwater episode to hear what I mean. The conversations are entertaining, thoughtful, informative, and inviting. Stop reading this review and just click subscribe.
Wow.
So thank you to Linda and Mouthdork. Thank you to listening. And for more great insight on what it's like dealing with me, listen to our post-game show where Scott can discuss what it's like just spending all the time he gets to do with me and to see how beautiful both of us are.
Yeah. You get to actually see us. And by the way, I just want to say, Mouth Dork is a great name for a great username. So if you want to be like Mouth Dork and Lisa, Lisa or Linda?
Linda
or Linda, please leave us a message. And by the way, don't forget that you can leave us a voicemail at 804-621-5803. Let us know if there's a word or phrase you want to hear, or if you have any feedback, and you may hear yourself on the show. All right, Steve, Bob's your uncle.
Watch out for bears, and kale is from the devil.
Speaksies.
All right, take a look at this. In case you missed it Saturday, the Auburn Eagle around Jordan-Hare Stadium, it flew into the glass, Herm.
The Eagle hit the window.
Boom. Hungry. Into the glass. It was closed.
There goes some of them chicken tenders.
Continued his flight. Auburn, Clemson, Saturday.